afternoon, everyone. Namaste. I, Surbhi Jain, extend a very warm welcome to all of you from the team of SCOPE, a society for creation of opportunities through proficiency in English. On behalf of our joint CEO, ma'am, Mansi ma'am, and Director of Higher Education, Shri P.B. Pandya sir, I welcome our esteemed speaker, Ms. Charmis Maniar, for today's webinar. Today's topic for the webinar is the prestigious G20 Summit. The G20 Summit is held annually, and this year it is held under the leadership of our Honorable Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi ji, and India has got the presidency for this year. Going further, Charmis ma'am will enlighten us and share details on the G20 Summit. I now call upon our Honorable Speaker, of a highly qualified and experienced English language trainer, to take over and commence the event. Thank you. Yes, ma'am, over to you.
Thank you, Surbhi. It was really a warm welcome, and I take a lot of pride in taking this topic as my topic for talk. Okay, so I'm going to start with this one part. Okay. Is it visible, Surbhi?
Yes, ma'am, it's visible.
Great, thanks. So, did you know that India is focusing on improving quality and access to education by establishing more than 500, say, medical colleges and build one medical college per district? Did you know that we have around 1,057 recognized universities and more than 8,902 AICT approved institutions, over 3 million intake capacity? So why am I talking all these things to you? Because you are a student, and this is what matters a student. So today what I'm going to talk about is the most talked topic of the town, and it is something which works as a benefit for all of us, right? So it is looking forward to India in a bright way. So the new education policy, new national education policy, is to revolutionize education through immense inclusiveness. And this is one part of my topic today. Okay, it's just a small part of it. So, Namaskar, my name is Charmis, and I am going to talk about the G20 Summit and India's presidency. So, G20, I mean, it's everywhere. You go on the roads, it's on the hoardings, you go to any talk show, you find G20, it's there in the newspaper, it's there on the YouTube, it's there on the websites, everywhere is G20, right? So it's the most happening thing, and it's good to talk about these happening things, right? So let's look at the larger picture. What is happening? Okay. So when we talk about one nation, India, be the Vishwaguru, like our culture says, right? Now, this is one chance, one time when India shows up its leading position, right? India this year takes the G20 presidency for a year, 1 year. 365 days. India leads the G20, the group of 20 nations. right? They are the most powerful countries of the world, and the entire world is looking at India with high hopes. 1 minute. So what is G20? Let us understand, okay? Now, G20 is a group of 20 such countries that represent 60% of the global population. Zyada se zyada log, majority. These 20 countries account 75% of the world's trade, money, and 85% of the GDP comes from these countries. So it is huge. We're talking about something really, really huge. India's presidency in the G20 started in December 2020, and it's going to continue till November 2023. So, in 1999, the G20 was founded after Asian financial crisis, right? In 1997, Asian countries faced a huge financial crisis, and a forum, a small group for finance ministers and central bank governors was framed to discuss global economic and financial issues. Global economic and financial issues. So we are talking something very specific, right? Now, through this, the working of this forum and its positive outcomes, in 2008, it became the leading forum to address the global economic cooperation. Why the world needs that cooperation was due to the benefits it saw in the working of the entire duration from 1999 to 2007, right? Now, who is this G20? So, they are a group of 20 nations. So this year, India is the president of this G20 group. Now this G20 has got a rotating pattern of presidency. So there's no fixed thing that any one person, it comes and goes. It's in rotation. But this rotation for this particular year allows us to bring up ourselves. Number one. Number two, it is giving an opportunity at the right time. If you look at the global scenarios, which I'm going to talk about, right? This year is going to be fantabulous. So what are the other nations? Argentina, Australia, Brazil, Canada, China, European Union, France, Germany, Indonesia, Italy, Japan, Mexico, Russia, Saudi Arabia, South Africa, South Korea, Turkey, UK, and the US, right? So this is G20. Now, why did G20 come, right? So let's talk about 1999 and let's talk about what happened actually, okay? So the need for G20 was felt when there was a small group of G7. The G7, that is a group of 7 nations. These 7 nations were only the developed nations of the world. So they did not have that realizing, or they did not have that understanding of certain requirements of developing nations. So they include, this G7 group included all the developed countries. The Western power only cared for their interest. उनको वही समझ में आ रहा था, right? But in globalized world, when we talk about the entire world, things happening in one part of the world also affects the other, right? One example of it is the global financial crisis. I mean, the financial crisis that took place in US in the year 2008, right? There was only 1 year where US faced that recession timing, if you have heard of, right? you all are young people and might not be aware. But then if you look into some old things, you will find out you were quite young at that time. So probably you might not be aware, but if you are, you will understand this. So recession in US affected so many other parts of the world, and that is when they started realizing, okay, this should not be, right? There's more of accountability, a lot of responsibility to be taken in, right? In the same way, in 1997, prior to that, right, there was a financial crisis in Southeast Asia. The crisis began in Thailand, a small country, right? And it spread across Asia and affected many parts of the world, right? So G20 was established because G7 countries realized that an international cooperation was necessary, right? People came to know, even if they were developed countries, they came to know that a cooperation was required. And only after the 2008 financial crisis that US faced, right, the leaders started taking this seriously, right? Because they had seen the benefits of that small forum in 1999 to 2008, how it had come up, the crisis, right? So they saw the benefits and they thought, okay, this is good, we can take it forward, right? After that, the world leaders started meeting seriously and having productive discussion. So now it is one world that we're talking about. Earlier, it was one nation. Now, interconnection and then global things coming up. So this is G20 2023. And this year it is India's presidency. So if you look at the logo, I'm in love with this logo, which actually shows the pride of the nation, our national flower, and the concept of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, the entire world coming into that one flower. So beautiful, right? So the ideology, the tag that it carries this time is again Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, right? And it is interpreted in a beautiful manner, saying one earth, one family, one future. So we consider one earth as one family, the Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, right? So we should all work together for a bright future. So how beautiful India has come up with a concept that's really something that is expected out of an emerging leader, right? So India is one emerging leader now. So India's presidency in 2023. So I personally feel it is right opportunity meeting at the right time, right? So this year, the opportunity meets the right timing in the global scenario as well, right? India has G20 presidency from December 2022, which is already gone. So we are in the presidency timings, and it will be till November 2023. Right, this presidency is rotated, right? So it's nothing very special that India has gained or achieved. No, it is one right opportunity that has come on the right timing. So it is one bright chance for India to show its leadership skills to the world, right? So generally what happens in G20 is it is ruled by Troika. Troika means the past presidency, the current presidency, and the future presidency will work together on the agendas, and it will make it happen. So it is majorly action focused, right? So, so the past president for G20 Summit 2022 was Indonesia. This year it is India, and next year is going to be Brazil, right? So the Troika this time, it has been one unique combination that all three nations are developing nations. So they can address the world about their concerns, number one. Number two, the opportunities. Number three, the strengths that they can produce forward, right? And they can work on different aspects all together. So, as a president's, India gets a special power that it can invite a lot of other nations to come and be a part of G20 Summit, right? So this year, India has invited these guest nations, that is Bangladesh, Egypt, Mauritius, Netherlands, Nigeria, Oman, Singapore, Spain, and UAE. Right. So this, along with these nations, they are going to be international bodies that are going to come and be a part of the G20 summits. So, hone kya wala hai, right? What's going to happen? Let's understand and how. Right. So India is going to hold 200 meetings across the year in India, over 32 different sectors, where we as an Indian can project the true picture of India. So when we say that we are developing countries, we need to have right facts and figures that call us developing, and how much is left to get into the developed place, right? So this is generally what happens, right? So India has got one bright chance to prove itself that it's the most competitive nation in the world, right? So if you look at that chance, it's going to be huge, right? India aims to focus 4 major objectives. That is to have sustainable development, holistic approach, responsibility towards the world, and inclusiveness, right? So how does it say that is going to do all these things? So the objectives of G20 are very clear. Number one, it is to policy coordination between its members in order to achieve global economic stability and sustainable growth. Number two, it is to promote financial regulations that reduce risks and prevent future financial crisis. Right? So it works as a visionary for them. And number three, it creates a new international financial architecture, right? So as a student, you might think, what is financial architecture and why are we thinking about it, right? So when you get into certain things, you will understand it better. So I would suggest for some time, you may take this as collective information for you to ponder upon. It is mostly interest based, but then it definitely affects each one of us. So I feel each one of you should think about it, read about it, and gather as much as possible. Right. Now the G20 initially focused largely on broad macroeconomic issues, right? But since it expanded, जैसे जैसे वो expand होता गया, its agenda and inter alia, the dependency included trade, climate change, sustainable development, health, agriculture, energy, environment, climate change, and anti-corruption also. So many things happening in India, right? Just to show up the leadership and to bring out results. So this year is a year of actions which is going to give us a lot of effects in the entire decade to come. Now, in India's presidency, with overarching aim of enhancing G20's efforts to achieve many of agendas, India's presidency has proposed a few priorities, right? And these priorities are accelerating progress, on SDG, that is Sustainable Development Goals. Sustainable development. It is not just development, sustainable development. Then there's a beautiful word which has made a huge impact, that is life. That is lifestyle for environment. Beautifully written, LIFE, lifestyle for environment. So it concerns everything related to bringing the global perspective, Mother Earth. And data for development, right? So three major factors that is going to talk about. India's participation in the G20 process stems the realization that as a major developing economy, India has a vital stake in the stability of international economic financial system. India has been actively involved in G20 preparatory process through two different tracks. The first one is the Sherpa tracks, which decides the financial policies. Prime Minister participated in all the past G20 summits so that it can build up a huge impactful tracks for working. So G20's major features that are going to be focused on growth and development, we have over here the Sherpa tracks, which decides the foreign policies. Now, the first one of it is agriculture, right? Now, the G20 agriculture deputies group the G20 agriculture group was created during the French presidency in 2011. It was to deal with global food prices, right? And it has become very important forum to bring in cooperation among the G20 members and talk about the issues that are critical achieving the UN 2030 agenda, right? So it works for huge governing bodies, world level bodies it's going to work with. And the idea is the goal of zero hunger. So among all the crisis that we face around the world, right? Sadly but true, that hunger remains the first one, right? So this happens to be one place which acquires the highest position on the Sherpa tracks, that is agriculture, the dependency, and that the food that the Mother Earth provides is served to all the people it requires, right? The working of group facilitates information exchange, cooperation on the range of global issues such as food security, nutrition, antimicrobial resistance, food waste and loss, sustainability, and resilient and inclusive food value chains, right? The next one is anti-corruption. The G20 anti-corruption group was established in 2010. So why am I talking about the years? Let me just quickly let you know about it. So when G20 was formed, right, it started taking year by year into different presidencies. Year by year, people brought in the visions of different requirements. So now when there are different nations leading the world for a certain period of time, they can bring forward their own concerns and they can get support. So that's a huge opportunity, right? So every part of this tracks, they've come from some country, sometime, and it has got an impact. It has been still working for it. So it has got huge goals. Till it addresses all parts of the world, that initiative does not stop. Wow, what an impactful thing, right? So it is necessary for you to know when people realize that this is required. So anti-corruption was actually brought in, in the year 2010, right? And it reports about the anti-corruption issues and aims to establish minimum common standards among the legal systems, right? Now, it is in order to combat the corruption. We all know it. We all know it, and probably at times we all are used to it. But we know somewhere down the line it is not something that we prefer. So it has to stop. So what it does, it focuses on public and private sector integrity and transparency to control the bribery, international cooperation, asset recovery, beneficial ownership transparency, and vulnerable factors and capacity building. So they decide the policies for this and they work upon it, and they are put into practice in the nations where it is required. So that gives a huge impact. Benefit of each part is coming to us, and we shall develop, we shall progress with it. The next one is digital economy, right? Digital economy is a very new thing. It is established in 2021. It offers inspiration and broad guidance to policymakers to harnessing the digital potential of economies. It aims at digital transformation to enhance public participation and realize inclusive social economic growth. For us, India is not new. We have made it happen. India leads the digital transactions now, right? With BeamPay, UPI, India has brought a revolutionary move into digital economy. The next is disaster risk reduction. Very much necessary. We all know with global scenarios, there have been a lot of disasters happening around the world, right? Countries have a high level of exposure to disaster risk with a combined estimate of average annual loss of 9% of their average annual investment. So every year, 9 to 10% an economy has to spend on disaster management. Oh, that's huge, right? So G20 in a comprehensive and sustained manner is working on disaster risk reduction. And in India's presidency, it is to encourage the collective work by the G20, undertake multidisciplinary research. A lot of research and a lot of brain is required. Even money is required to put for this kind of management system. So exchange of best practices done by the people in certain areas of the world is now coming to us for disaster risk reduction. The next, development. Kisko acha nahi lagta? Everybody likes development, right? So it has been an acting custodian of G20. Development was an agenda from 2010, right? After the adoption of 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and its goals, Development Working Group has played an important role in supporting Sherpas in both driving the G20 sustainable development and working with other work streams. So it coordinates almost all parts of the Sherpa tracks and other tracks as well. So intersections and a lot of churning and efforts to achieve the 2030 agenda has been done by this development sector. The next one that affects all of us. I understand that most of my viewers, most of my listeners are related to education today. So I'm here to talk about education. The education working group is the EdWG. It was established in 2018 and it focuses on strengthening learning outcomes and equitable access through technological tools, digitalization, universal quality education, financing, partnership, and international cooperation. So, India is now coming up to the world level education. Wow, I am glad. I am so much hoping to see this to articulate. I am so much hoping to come this into the reality very, very soon. So it also collaborates with employment and other working groups to address cross-cutting issues like skill development and school to work transition. It's been very recent, and I, being a trainer, I have seen that campus to corporate trainings is the most happening thing in almost every industry now, right? And this is because of this. This is the outcome of this G20 vision. So when you get back into how certain things came, right, you will understand that this is not just one, just two, it's the entire world working for it, right? And India is trying to get the best practices, best essence out of it. The next is employment, of course, necessary after education immediately. That is employment. So employment has been a task, it's a task force since 2011. And it discusses the labor, employment, and social issues to develop strong, sustainable, balanced, inclusive, and job-rich growth. So we're not just talking about growth for the sake of numbers. We are actually looking forward to employability. We are actually looking forward to initiatives that have come up. The next is the environment and climate sustainability. So we are all understanding the importance and the need of the hour is environment and climate sustainability, right? I just read in the newspaper today, Ahmedabad has got its own new record of having the highest temperature in February. Right, so this is March. Today is 1st March, so February already has got the highest records. What do we expect? March, April, May. Oof, my God, it's too much, right? So we are not talking about it. We are going to talk about, say, the G20. Why am I coming back and forth? Is because it affects us. It's very important to know that everything that is happening or we are talking about is actually affecting each one of us to the core. So let us understand that we need to create a vision. We need to take this G20 2023 very seriously. Let's hope, let's understand what best as an individual, if we can do something, it'll be great for the entire nation and the world, right? So environment and climate sustainability talks about the environment, the climate issues, which include the inter alia resources, efficiency, circular economy, ocean health, marine litter, coral reefs, land degradation, biodiversity loss, water resource management, and ways to mitigate and adapt to climate change, right? So everything that we can think of related to environment and climate sustainability has been inclusive into this foreign policy, right? Here, sorry. Here not in the list, but then I would also want to talk about one topic that is also a part of this inclusive area, and that is called tourism. Tourism has been added very lately very late in 2020, and it has got a bigger agenda of bringing together the member countries and relevant stakeholders to discuss, deliberate, and guide the course of action for further development of local and global tourism, and also to mitigate the common challenges faced by the sectors, including the pandemic situation. Right. So making tourism more sustainable and boosting its resilience has been the group's primary focus in recent times. So now this was the Sherpa track. Now Sherpa track is one part, one stream of G20. Another important stream of G20 is the finance track, right? Now what happens? In Sherpa tracks, there are ministers, there are global leaders, there are institutions and the country representatives who come and build the policy. In finance, there are financial ministers, there are banks and people, those who are other stakeholders, international level people. They come in and they talk about a lot of agendas. The first of that agenda is international financial architecture. Right? Now, international financial architecture deals with the issues related to international finance, global safety net, and matters related to development of finance, debt vulnerability, enhancing transparency, capital flow, and local currency bond markets. Right? So it is one place that actually works on the happening things, right? If you look at the numbers, the figures, you identify that finance is got high impact, right? And this brings together international financial architecture, brings together all countries, gives it one chance to put forward and bring up a better world to live, right? Now, I was thinking in the Sherpa tracks also, I will talk about India kya karega isme, right? So I will talk about what will India do in each of these parts, and this year specifically what India focuses. But that will be sometime later in this session itself, right? So let's understand the big things first, and then we'll talk about India kya karega, right? It's going to be a very interesting part. Then talking about infrastructure. Infrastructure deliberates on various aspects of infrastructure investments, including infrastructure as an asset class, promoting quality infrastructure, infra tech, identifying innovative instruments for mobilizing financial resources for infrastructure investment, right? The next is sustainable finance, right? Kuch cheezein, as if I look at it as a student perspective, sometimes I also feel yaar ye to meri samajh ke bahar hai, right? But when you actually get into the detail, you will understand that these are the aspects that lead you to connecting those dots, which we never look at, right? Now, when you develop a vision, when you hear something related to sustainable finance, you will have that perspective. Okay, what is it working for, right? And that is going to help. So sustainable finance is newly established It was established in 2021, and it deliberates on to how to help focus attention of G20 and international organizations and other stakeholders to key priorities of sustainable financial agendas, from consensus on to key actions, right? So it is not just building policies or just talking. It is actually bringing an accountability for what is the idea, how are you going to put into action, and the roadmap in between. So there's no chance of escape. Everybody agrees. Consensus is there. And then from consensus to key action, everything is taken on it. The next is Global Partnership for Financial Inclusion, right? It works for the advancing of financial inclusions on a global dynamic. From work areas, it includes from improving financial systems infrastructure to pursuing policies conducive of harnessing emerging opportunities, facilitating the flows, remittance of flows, and reducing the cost of remittance and transfer. Everything on digital finance literacy and bridging the digital divide, among others. Everything done by global partnerships for financial inclusions. Then, joint finance and health. Oh. Joint finance and health, it does a brilliant job, okay? It enhances global cooperation on issues related to prevention, preparedness, and response to any given challenge, right? So, promoting exchange of experiences and best practices, developing coordination, arrangement between finances and health matters, promoting collective action, assessing and addressing health emergencies with cross-border impact, and encouraging effective stewardship of resources in pandemic kind of situation, that is pandemic PPR, prevention, preparedness, and response, while adapting to One Health approach. So it's so huge, and it is so well managed that each one of us is connected to whatever is being planned, right? From individual to a society to a state to a nation to the world, right? The picture, though it is huge, it brings down, it zero downs to one person. Every individual matters. One health approach, everybody's health, right? The next, international taxation. Oh, big thing. International taxation agenda in G20 is discussed directly at the level of central bank deputies, and there is no formal working group on it, right? It works collective. The matters discussed under the group includes addressing tax challenges arising from digitalization of the economy, fighting against tax evasions, ending bank secrecies and tax havens, exchange of information, and addressing tax avoidance by multinational corporations. The work on G20 international tax agenda is carried out in a specific framework, right? So this gives a good opportunity when it comes to 2023, right? India's presidency, India can also take a lot of learning and give back a lot of information on how it plans to come forward as a most competitive economy for the world. Then, Financial sector issues. In G20 finance tracks, financial sector issues are discussed directly at the level of central banks and the ministries. There is no external formal group that works, but it works through entire track together. And the Financial Stability Board provides the necessary discussion papers for facilitating the deputies and discussions on G20 financial sector agenda, right? So it's a direct impact that it brings. The key areas discussed in the financial sector issue is to strengthen global financial system resilience, prudent oversight, improving risk management, establishing supervisory colleges, enhancing cross-border payments, addressing structural vulnerabilities in non-banking financial intermediation, and climate-related financial risk. Assessment of these risks from crypto assets and the policy approaches among the others. So, financial track also has got a high thing on its mind to impact the world with its coming together. Now, let's come back to मैं बता रही थी. I was talking about India क्या करेगा, right? So, I am so much in the wow of how India has taken a lot of learning and brought a global perspective when it comes to planning, its G20 agenda and bringing, say, key points to actions, right? So I talked about one thing that India plans is about lifestyle for environment, right? Life is categorized by 3 prolonged strategies for collection of climate action. The first step involves nudging individuals to making behavioral changes to change the composition of the demand. The second step involves encouraging the industries and the market to respond promptly to changing demands. And the third step, it involves the government and the policy makers revisiting their strategies for accelerating sustainable consumption and production. So you see, life is actually us. The first is individual approach. The next is industry and the market. And the third is the government, right? And the policymakers. So it's been a beautiful initiative which has been well framed, and it's been well practiced also to a greater extent in India, right? The second one is agriculture, right? Now, agriculture actually talks about the entire growth, right? As I told, when we talked about agriculture, I spoke about it, right? But then this presidency is actually talking about the critical challenge confronting of humanity. Today, we are a global character and not confined to national boundaries and require a collective action. We can solve the challenges and the things that are happening, on a global perspective. We can solve them with simple initiatives, and India's presidency is an opportunity to revive that multilateralism, and India can steer the empowerment of alternative international institutions of global governance that respond to a lot of potential. The next, we're going to talk at the G20. India has emphasized the need to cut the absolute emissions rapidly while also considering the Paris Agreement, which has stressed respective historical responsibilities and delivery of climate, finance, and technology at low costs, taking into account per capita emissions and difference in the GDP. So that's all related to developments, the sustainable developments. The energy transitions will play a key role in highlighting the issues at the stake for global community, especially for emerging developing economies. India and the G20 members can play an influential role in catalyzing sustainable finance to scale, meet the climate targets, and the broader sustainable development goals. Right? For this year, India has got a beautiful tagline as well. The roadmap to greener India. Right? They call it Panchamrit. Right? What is this Panchamrit? Panchamrit is rich non-fossil energy capacity of 500 gigawatts by 2023. 50% of energy requirements shall be fulfilled via renewable sources of energy by 2030. Reduce of 1 billion carbon emissions by 2030. Reduce carbon intensity below 45% by 2030. So, a strict 5-year, 7-year down the line plan has been created. It visions, it envisages the great impact India can bring through this one presidency and its effects further. India will also have a net zero means net zero carbon emissions by 2070. So it has got a long-term aspect also to work upon. Last but not the least, this is for you. Let us all join in the vision and see the nation leading the world, right? March 1st, this 1st of March, we've already been December, January, February, and we see a lot of happening. Every day the newspaper talks about some update that it gives, that comes through G20, right? And a greater impact will also be seen, I'm sure, in the upcoming months, right? What you as a student, as a youth, are expected. You as a youth are the biggest wealth of the country. My dear, you make a difference. You can make a difference. And you're expected to come together to contribute towards the wellness and happiness of the youth for making our country a better one. Thank you. Thank you so much. Namaskar. Signing off. Charmis Maniar.
Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am. The webinar was indeed very informative. I hope it will be very beneficial to the students. On behalf of our joint CEO, Mansi ma'am, and the Director of Higher Education, Shri P.P. Pandya sir, I express my deepest gratitude to everyone present today. Thank you all. Namaste.